Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a comedy horror film, Witching and Bitching. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a smelly girl Eva riding a Tesla motorcycle through the forest in a cool and carefree way. She pulls up in front of a stump to meet up with two witches. Meanwhile, Eva's granny, a gray-haired witch, is using cards for divination and concludes that a good fortune is underway. In a Spanish city, Jose and his gaggle of accomplices show up to an event, dressed in miscellaneous fancy costumes. Jose comes as Jesus, with his body painted silver, while his partner in crime, Antonio, arrives as a toy soldier, resplendent in green. Along with them are SpongeBob, Minnie Mouses, Headless Man, and a few unnamed ones. Jose and Antonio are moving toward their targeted pawnshop slowly. As soon as Jose's son calls him from the pawnshop, Jose steps inside to start their planned robbery. Jose takes out a gun from his cross to fire at the glass shelves and threatens the shop assistants to fill his bag with gold rings. Antonio joins Jose in action and blames him for bringing his Dan's son. It turns out Jose only gets custody of his son once a week, so it seems logical for him to take his son along on a pawn shop robbery. What's more, the robbery is staged to pay his alimony and provide for his son. At this moment, a security guard senses something is wrong with his fishy nose, so he approaches the shop for inspection. To stop the guard's intervention, SpongeBob dashes over to shoot the fishy guard down. The tourists are thrown into chaos and evacuate in all directions like mad cows. The policemen who are patrolling the street come at once and happen to kill and send SpongeBob to meet Jesus. Patrick Star hugs SpongeBob and cries for his death, while the rest of the characters flee the crime scene. Distracted by various escapees, the cops do not notice the shop door, which opens quietly. At gunpoint, Jose, Antonio, and son hijack a taxicab and take the police on a chase. The taxi initially carries the driver and a noisy stout passenger, who ends up being thrown into the trunk. Driver plans to escape the horrid journey, but after hearing Jose and Antonio's fear and hatred of women, he opts in for the risk. It turns out that everybody has their own issues. Jose is in conflict with his ex-wife over the custody of their son. Antonio is terrified of his lustful girlfriend and unable to feed her hormone appetites. Driver is also adamant, being constantly bad-mouthed by a team-eating conspiracy of his mother, sister, and wife. The group happens to be united by a deep sense of unease and insecurity regarding women, so they decide to head to the Spanish border. Back to the police's investigation, the arrested culprits reveal more details about the armed robbery that happened previously. Antonio first discovered many divorced couples selling their wedding rings at the gold exchange, so they kidnapped the original costume characters, dumped them into the sewer, and replaced them for the show. With some clues found, the police notify Jose's ex-wife of the crime soon. She visits the police station and identifies her son from the surveillance video. However, as Jose is painted from head to toe, the cops cannot recognize his face. Therefore, they request ex-wife to provide some photos of Jose. To their dismay, ex-wife does not keep any traces of Jose. Even his face is ripped out of every picture. In response to the police's slow actions, ex-wife goes after her son using her cell phone. Two cops in charge of the case have to follow ex-wife in panic. After a bumpy ride, the crew comes to Witch Granny's restaurant. When Driver goes to do his smelly business, he sees a rolling eye staring at his smelly part in the toilet bowl, which causes him to leave the bathroom in terror. When asked which town they will ride into next, Witch Granny tells them it is the village of Zugarramurdi. Driver is more afraid now, for the old village is said to be populated by evil witches. However, Witch Granny dismisses such bullshit myths. Son alone plays around outside the restaurant and is brought back by a grandpa. Driver notices a woman handling a broken leg in the kitchen and cannot wait to leave the restaurant. What is funny is that the two cops tailing ex-wife also lament their lot at the hands of bossy women. Due to all the terrible things he knows about Zugarramurdi, Driver refuses to go further. He recalls his uncomfortable experience at the restaurant, but Jose slaps him and warns him not to scare his son with ghost stories. Driver has no choice, but drives the car slowly into the fog. All of a sudden, their car crashes into the wandering granny. Antonio checks her health status by touching her neck, but Driver and Jose stop him. When they are debating what to do, the witch vanishes into thin air, without traces of her witchy smell. Jose learns from his son that the witch flies off in the dark, so everyone hurries back to the cab and moves on with their journey. As their car safely leaves the village, another woman blocks their way with her sexy body. She is a 40-year-old lady searching for her mother and pleads for a hitchhike. The crew then sends her to a huge castle, where they are met with cool and leather-clad Eva, the girl shown at the beginning of the film. It turns out that the middle-aged but still sexy lady is Eva's witch mom. Antonio immediately falls for Eva, but Eva is more interested in Jose, the Jesus, possibly because he smells better. They do not intend to stay, but as Sun disappears, Jose enters the castle to look for him. Now, Antonio is fascinated by Eva and wants to spend more time flirting with her, so Driver is forced to step into the castle with the rest. However, love sparks off quickly between Eva and Jose, and they almost fall into a tongue massage in Antonio's presence. Antonio has to remind Jose that his son is missing in action. While the two enjoy their hormone interactions with Eva, Driver is filled with fears alone. At the kitchen, they find the missing son being stripped of his clothes, tied up, and placed in the oven. Witch Granny even stuffs an apple into the boy's mouth, making him like a turkey to be roasted. Luckily, Jose rescues his son in time and leaves the castle, although Eva apologizes to him for her witch granny's doing. On the way, they dump passenger and his shit onto the roadside, possibly because the car is overloaded. As their car approaches the custom, Jose orders Driver to return to the witch's house, since he has accidentally left the loot there. So they decide to return to the village to take back the lost treasure. On their way back, they put the passenger back into the trunk. Jose and Antonio sneak into the castle, while Sun and Driver remain in the cab. When exploring the castle, Antonio chances upon Eva posing sultrily in her smelly bikini. Jose sees Antonio losing his senses, so he reminds him that they must find the golden rings. Later, they realize that the bag of treasure is left in the kitchen. When Jose grabs hold of the loot, he also grabs the attention of Eva's witch mom and granny. Needless to say, the four of them start a fierce fight and engage in rounds of muscle wrestling. To everyone's shock, the heavy mom and granny crawl on the ceiling freely like spider pigs. After firing a few shots, Jose and Antonio run to the exit, but are soon captured up and tortured by the witches with their long, juicy tongues. Elsewhere, there is no peace for the cab either. Eva hops onto the window of the car like a monster, sending chilling hormones down the driver's spines. So Driver starts the car in an attempt to get rid of Eva. Unfortunately, they crash into a tree and are forced to alight. Eva continues to pursue them and eventually brings back Driver and passenger. On the other hand, Jose's ex-wife visits the restaurant and talks with Eva's grandpa for information, the same grandpa that picked up Jose's son earlier. However, due to the unexpected toilet harassment and humiliation she endured, she has to rush out for the sake of her sexy body. The police officers want to call for help, but poor reception kills off their hope, so they continue to follow ex-wife with complaints and grumbles. In the castle, Jose, Antonio, Driver, and passenger are all tied up to the chairs in the dining hall, with something sinister approaching. Eva does not forget to seduce Jose while setting the table. Witch Mom takes a stroll on the ceiling and invites her fellow witch friends to the dinner and mentions something about the Holy Child. At the same time, Jose's son alone walks out from the frost in a blanket and tries to flag down a car for help. In fact, it is ex-wife's car, but she's too busy to notice her own son. Even worse, the policemen behind her also ignore the son, mistaking him for a hairless wild boar. Unfortunately, the boy happens to stop Witch Granny's car, and thus is kidnapped by Witch Granny and Grandpa. He's pushed into the car loaded with frozen human limbs. Back in the castle, Eva plucks out passenger's teeth, intending to make him a toothless fairy, but she almost strangles him to death. Jose is terrified by such violence and secretly takes a knife to cut Antonio's rope, but because he cannot use his hand freely, he cuts into Antonio's arm, and thus creating more pain for him. Ex-wife finally notices her son sitting in the witch's car, and she alerts the cops for help. The trio breaks into the castle via a secret passage, climbing up to a space above the ceiling. At this time, Eva is serving her guests a plate of fried human fingers. Seeing his fingers all turned into food, passenger groans with fear, pushing the other three men to squeeze their brains for solutions. Driver advises Jose to flirt with Eva and win her over with his muscles. Shortly after, Witch Granny, Grandpa, Son, and a dozen of other witches walk into the dining hall. As the host, Witch Mom declares the opening of her dinner party. After addressing the witches, she begins to criticize existing religions and condemns man for being useless creatures, but only hormone-rich animals. It turns out they are looking forward to the Holy Child being born through the Holy Virgin and overthrowing the men's world by use of the Holy Child. In fact, previous rituals have all failed, and this will be the 32nd ritual they are holding. But Eva's witch mom is confident in the upcoming ceremony because the Holy Child has come with a full bag of wedding rings, which is the source of power they need. Now the two officers and ex-wife have reached the ceiling above the dining hall. However, the Smelly is too weak to hold their body weight, so they end up falling onto the dining table. During the chaos, Jose, Antonio, and Driver rip off the rope and fight their way out against many witches. The dinner is then turned into a fierce fight. Ex-wife is captured by the witches and forced to eat some tainted toad juice and passenger's smelly ear. By doing so, they successfully turn ex-wife into a witch. Meanwhile, Eva rescues Jose, but she is disappointed with the frigidity of his manner. Jose confesses his love to the horny Eva, but she is not pleased, and she even slaps Jose so hard that he almost falls over the railing. To calm her down, Jose suddenly gives Eva a passionate tongue massage. After the massage, however, Eva is filled so full with hormones that she cannot release a tantrum anymore, which causes her to roll on the ground as hard as she can. Jose then seizes the opportunity to flee the scene and makes his way into the underground chamber. In the meantime, Antonio and Driver are painstakingly finding their way out. Little do they know that hordes of witches are waiting for them ahead. In the underground chamber, Jose runs into Eva's brother, who has been imprisoned by their witch mom for a few decades. We can see that constant humidity makes the brother's skin rot and peel away. The lonely and poor man hugs Jose and sheds tears of joy in his crocodile eyes. Back to the rituals, Witch Mom has put on her luxurious wizard robe, and other witches are busy making necessary preparations. Enraged by Eva's fall for Jose, Witch Mom puts her in a coffin as punishment and leaves her in the tunnel. Jose frees Eva's brother from his shackles, and the two of them rush to the event to save the little boy. On the way, they discover Eva and take her out of the coffin. The brother teases Eva as she pays such a heavy price for her romance, but Jose refuses to untie Eva. At the ritual chamber, the two cops, Antonio and Driver, are put up on poles, waiting to be lit as human candles. At such a depressing moment, one cop declares his hormone fetish for another cop. Witch Mom makes fun of the Bible verse and arouses the support of countless witches. Moments later, Grandpa places a huge plate and fork on the table, and the now-witch ex-wife sets her son on the plate. In the singing of the witches, Witch Mom flies up to wander above the cave. Right then, with the ground shaking, an ugly goddess resembling a fertility statue makes her grand entry and flexes her ugly figure. The brother and Jose arrive in time to witness Goddess swallowing down Jose's son right away. The struggling boy passes through her throat, chest, intestine, and leaves her smelly body tainted with mucus. With this, Witch Mom declares that the boy is the hermaphrodite holy child who will lead them to victory over men. Hearing the boy calling Jose daddy, Goddess picks up brother and eats him in one gulp, including his smelly part. To everyone's surprise, Eva appears without chains and claims that she knows how to defeat Goddess. As soon as Goddess grabs hold of Jose, Eva jumps up to her head and uncoils the rope around her head. That makes the grotesque gargantuan monster fall on the bonfire, naked and in agony. After spitting out brother, Goddess stumbles her way out of the cave, crashing into the two cops, Antonio and Driver, before trampling Witch Granny to death. Another battle between man and witches begins. Jose tries to hold his son, but only to get mucus thrown up in his face and knocked off by Witch Mom's wand. But Eva takes the boy from her Witch Mom and attacks her without mercy. In the end, Eva manages to kill her Witch Mom by smashing her wand into pieces. As a result, all the witches scream hard at her death. Strangely enough, ex-wife starts to punch Jose without stop. When Jose is on the verge of dying, brother saves him by hitting ex-wife with an iron cylinder. Eventually, the survivors leave the hell raised by the witches. 1 month later, Son and a little girl are doing a magic show at school. Jose and Eva show up together to support Son. Antonio boldly tells his girlfriend to take a break from her crazy work schedule. The two cops are chatting about where to go for the holidays. When the magic show ends, the little girl spits out green mucus from her mouth. We also see that ex-wife, Witch Mom, and Granny also attend the show and enjoy it much, which possibly indicates that all the previous happenings are just a fantasy show. This Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.